This video is going to show you two techniques I like to use to generate sort of film emulated looks in DaVinci Resolve. So I'm going to show you one technique, the FilmVision power grade, which is a paid for power grade from a YouTuber called Sir. I love it. I use it in about 50 to 60% of my work. And if you don't want to buy that, I'll step you through one of the processes that I also like to use, which is completely contained using Resolve's own inbuilt controls and effects. Okay, so we're in Resolve. This is a shot from the RED Komodo, shot on Sirui Nightwalker lenses from a recent video I put out. And here it is, graded with the FilmVision power grade. At first look, yes, it might look a little bit overwhelming, but it's actually not. It's really simple. It basically involves color space transform, and what that does is it takes your camera color space, so whatever camera you shot this in, you would input that here. So if you shot it on a Panasonic, you would put Panasonic V-gamut. Basically, it converts it to an ARRI color space, and his power grade works within that. And then at the end of the power grade is his LUT. So at the heart of it, you've basically got, this color space transform, LUT, and then in between, in the ARRI log color space, you've got your kind of like basic exposure and white balance corrections. And then this cluster of nodes here is just all effects. And this is, how far you want to go in terms of dialing in your film emulation. So, you've got everything from grain, halation, pro mist, stuff like, color warmth, color density. It's just like a type of saturation. And then you've got stuff down here like dust, gate weave, and film breathing. And these I rarely use because I think it's maybe a bit too much, especially for professional projects, but it just, adds like dust into the frame and imperfections and sort of motion inconsistencies that are similar to when you play back film. It also has some inbuilt looks here. So if I turn this node on, again, I don't tend to use these as much, but if you want to push like a warmer look, a sort of cine green, bleachy look, and then a sort of a tungsten look, you can apply those and get sort of instant looks. So I'll quickly walk you through the FilmVision power grade. So if you've bought it, it will be in your power grades, and you basically just drag it onto your clip. Let's get rid of that. So obviously it's not looking anywhere near like we want it. So you just go to the color space transform, and then you input your color space from your camera. So we shot this on a RED, so 3G10, and then you can see that's getting us somewhere there, and it's going to turn that looks off, and then we go into the LUT node, and we just need to add in this FilmVision LUT, and now you can see we're almost getting there. And then I would begin adding in the sort of like effects, and sort of, when I'm grading something, normally have these switched on, sort of looking where we're going. These three nodes here to sort of boost whites, blacks, so give you quite punchy blacks. And then this is like a fade. So if you want a more faded look, it just brings up the shadows and lower tones a little bit. But yeah, at the moment, this is maybe a little bit too blue, so go into the white balance, and I'd maybe just push some warmth into it like that. I'm doing this really quickly, so forgive me, it's not going to be perfect. Might put a bit of magenta in there as well, and then exposure wise, maybe just pull that back a bit. And this is really quick, and then you could kind of get away with that. And then grain, I tend to go with the 16mm grain, just because it's a bit bigger and funkier and coarser. And then we're sort of almost there, really. Maybe I'll just bring the gamma down a bit more. That's not too bad for a couple of, for about 2 minutes work. Obviously, there's a lot of room to finesse it. And yeah, you can mess around with it and adjust it to your heart's content. Halation again has two sort of settings. Again, I tend to go on 16mm. You'll find that this adds a bit of general warmth to your shot as well. So just bear that in mind when you're doing white balancing and adding this warmth node. Another thing you can do with these is, you'll notice here, you can adjust the input of it. So if you want to add more saturation, you can adjust the input and the strength of how much of that node is applied. Same with this color density node here, you can do the same there. So on here, this is my own power grade, one that I built up from scratch, and I probably use this as an alternative to this FilmVision power grade, you know, on the other sort of 40 to 50% of my projects. This basically uses Resolve's inbuilt film LUTs. So you've got two, you've got the Kodak and the Fujifilm, and again it uses a color space transform, and then there's various white balance and exposure, there's a saturation node, skin tone node if you want to sort of correct any skin tones. This is the mid detail node, so on here, especially when I'm shooting on something like a Panasonic LUMIX S5, I'll dial this down between -5 and -10, and that just sort of brings the sharpness down in the mid range of the details. It's very subtle, especially on the Komodo, which isn't sort of over sharpened, so you might not need to use it on a camera like that. But it's just nice for sort of like rolling back that sharpness, that digital sharpness that you get on a lot of DSLRs. And then there's a grain node. But you can, I also sometimes build in additional effects here. So sometimes I'll add in a halation node and a glow node as well, if I want a bit more glow, sort of pro misty type vibe going on. On my structure, on my power grade, I'm just going to walk you through this now, so it's so you understand what it's doing. Again, we have a color space transform. Again, similar to the other one, we've set it to the RED's color science. For the output, this time, this is something you need to note. We'll go with output color space, use timeline, and then the output gamma, we use Cineon film log. Now, the reason we have the output gamma set to Cineon film log is because of the nature of Resolve's inbuilt film LUTs. So we've used these film LUTs previously in other color tutorials I've done, and I mentioned this, but yeah, make sure that this color space transform is set to Cineon log when you use these LUTs, otherwise you just won't get proper sort of colors and stuff. And then you can basically choose, ignore the ones up here, these are for a different color space, these are for Rec 709 color space, which is what we're working in. So only go from these 3.6 at the bottom, and there's 3 versions of each LUT, and basically they're just color temperatures. So you've got like a sort of middle of the road neutral, then you've got a colder, and then you've got a warmer one. And we're going to go for a warmer one just in this shot, just because it's sort of like a summery vibe we're going for. So then once you've got those added, you know, again, you're getting your shot closer to what you want. I would adjust my exposure with the color wheels here, you know, lift gamma gain, then my white balance, balance that out to where I want it to go. I've just cooled it off a little bit. And then you can see it's looking all right, but it's not really popping, or it's not popping how I want it to be. So this is quite an important node here, so the saturation node. And you can see here, we've really pumped that in. And what we're doing here is we're not cranking the saturation here. We're using a more sort of granular method. So on this middle saturation node, you right click, go down to color space, go to hue saturation luma, select that, and then under channels, just deselect channel 1 and channel 3. So essentially you've only got the saturation channel activated. So if I reset what we've done there, I would usually then go into the gamma, and you're just, so if we just increase, that's going to sort of pump up the skin tone a bit. So that's looking quite nice now. And then the final things I would do is this node here is what I would call a sort of de-sharpening node. You don't need to use it so much on the RED Komodo, but it just takes down the mid detail. So I'd put it around -5, experiment, and that just sort of softens the image up a little bit. Then I would add my grain. I usually go for a 16mm grain. I usually start with 500T 16mm, and then I would normally boost the saturation a little bit, reduce the softness, and maybe just tinker with the grain size a little bit. I like a slightly more colourful grain. And then, so this final node here, you don't have to use it, but it would be a skin tone node if you want to make any corrections or adjustments to skin tone. It's basically two nodes grouped together. There is the qualifying node here, so skin tone selected, and then you know, any balances you need to make. So just sort of maybe pulled a bit of that sort of magenta out. It's a little bit more green now. And then I would add a second node, which is a outside node. So add a node outside, and then that's and then connect it with this blue line here. And that basically just affects everything outside of the skin tone qualification. So basically like the entirety of the image outside of the skin tone. And then you can do some, this is kind of a slightly lazy technique. It's not the best, but you can effectively, you know, if you want to draw more attention to your skin tone and don't want to rely on a vignette, you can basically just sort of, you could desaturate the colors outside of that skin tone. You can pull the exposure down, the gamma down, and that's just going to help draw a bit more attention to that skin tone and just make it pop a little bit. And that's about it, really. You know, add a vignette maybe. That's a bit intense. And then this final thing is just bringing down those highlights. In this log wheel, I just dial back those highlights. Very subtle, but it just sort of brings the exposure down a little bit. Yeah, and there you go. That's it. So let's just have a look at this applied to a few other shots quickly. So this is LUMIX S5 IIX footage, shot one from my holiday at Stuni. Again, this is FilmVision. So you got your conversion, the LUT, exposure adjustments, white balance, saturation, grain, halation, promist, warmth, color, vignette, boom. And you've got a really nice looking shot. I mean, that's how quick it is to work with something like that. Here, you know, using my technique again, very easy, very quick. Obviously, you can just, once you've done this once, you can save out this power grade and copy it over. In this example here, I've added a few more effects. So I've added my vignette here, got your grain again, but I've also added in some halation. Again, very subtle, but it just adds a little bit of warmth. You can see it sort of coming into the jumper, the sky, and the skin tone. You can play around with that again, it's quite fun. And how it affects your image and stuff. Yeah, you can affect the threshold. I've added in a sort of a slight red glow, and then you can just play around with how strong it is. You can see that's there, how much gamma it's adding in, stuff like that. Again, really simple. Film LUT in here. This time we are using the Fujifilm stock, the sort of neutral one. Let's take another look at another shot. Again, shot on a S5 IIX. Again, super simple, looks really nice. And then a slightly different version using this power grade. Again, we've added in some halation. It's just sort of boosted those highlight areas a bit and added a bit of warmth to them. Slightly different shots. Again, these are done quite quickly as examples, so if you wanted to get them really close to each other, you could, if you were paying attention. In this case, in my power grade, I've done the thing where I've boosted the skin tone and sort of pulled down the exposure of everything outside of the skin tone, so you can see the effect of that. Whereas we don't have that going on in here, so the subject skin tone is a bit darker, but you could easily just introduce that to the beginning of the node structure. So remember, you can modify this power grade as well. You can add in your own adjustments, additional effects. You can take away bits from this and modify it to however you want it. Again, really simple. Recommend the FilmVision power grade. It works really well. Let's just take one more shot. This is a project I'm working on at the moment. Again, shot on the RED Komodo. This is it in log. When I'm on my Komodo, I will make I will tend to make color balance color temp adjustments to the raw settings first before making any further adjustments. But again, this is the FilmVision look. You can see, very nice, looks great. And then this is my own power grade. Again, I think it looks pretty good. There's subtle differences between the two. But again, both of these techniques will, give you nice results. This is using the warmer Kodak stock on this one. So again, it's very simple to get your own sort of film emulation looks without having to purchase power grades and stuff. Purchasing these power grades, a lot of the legwork is done for you already. It's been, stress tested, it's fine tuned. It can really speed up time in post, which is why I love this. It's a really quick way of getting a really great look on your footage. But don't forget, you can fairly easily build something that looks similar, or even better if you've got the time to put into it. I might sell this power grade at some point. I haven't really stress tested it across loads of different types of footage. I kind of would want to do that before I sell something, so it's more useful to you. But hopefully in this video you can sort of see how easy it is and quick it is to sort of build your own film looks. You don't always have to rely on plugins like Enhancer or Film Convert or those things that sort of take the control out of your hands and apply stuff in a sort of black box kind of way. The thing I loved about buying Sir's power grade was that I got it when I first got into Resolve just over a year ago, and using this power grade actually helped me learn how to use Resolve, so that I was eventually confident enough to start building my own grades and playing around and understand, the order of how things should sit in a node graph structure. So if you're new to Resolve, I would probably recommend just picking it up and playing around with it and sort of getting used to how these things affect your picture and how Resolve works. Again, watch his video about this. He goes into depth about how to use it. He obviously made it, so he has good advice on it. So anyway, thanks for watching. If this has been useful, let me know in the comments down below. Until next time, see ya.